The greatest stories in history were told in Greek mythology. Freaking out gods and heroes, amazing feats. Listen and you'll see it's freaking out.
That was cool.
I mean, coolest build-up, biggest letdown ever when we are brought on.
Yeah, exactly. The best introduction ever, and now it's just Gina and me sitting here. Yeah. We do have a cool show today, though.
Yeah, don't let our faces deter you. It's going to be an exciting show. We've got two very special guests backstage we're about to bring on, but we are starting today's show in a pretty different way. We are going to give a book away right away.
Yes.
Pretty cool book. Longtime viewers will be familiar with the series because we covered it last year. So we are looking for our first commenter. The very first comment I see, that is who is going to be taking home our very first book from the Greeking Out series, no less. I believe they're getting the Heroes and Olympians book, which is what we were talking about today. We're lucky enough to have the authors backstage. Kim Selva, our good friend. She is taking this book home. I'm writing down your name, Kim. Thanks for being
job. Great job, Kim. Yeah, you just have won our first copy of Greeking Out Heroes Olympians. We have 3 more to give away over the next 30 minutes. This book is right up the alley, I think, Gina, of our viewers, definitely up the alley of Scout Life readers, which is why we had an excerpt that appeared in the October issue of Scout Life magazines. We're so lucky to have the authors on today to tell us their story, how they get their ideas, how they came up with this. It's a father-daughter team, Gina. How cool is that?
It's the coolest. Their dynamic is awesome. Again, we were lucky enough to have them on last year. We're talking about the Greeking Out series, Heroes and Olympians is the book today. We talked about a different book before. We've got the inside scoop that there's a 3rd book coming out. We're talking too much. It's not about us today. Let's bring on
Kenny and Jillian. No one cares about us. Let's bring on our celebrity guests of the day. Are Kenny and Jillian ready? There's one. There's 2.
Hey, we care. We care about you guys. We love you guys.
You have to say that because this is our show, but yeah. No, we really appreciate having you on. Really loved reading the excerpt, Jason, and the Argonaut excerpt in the October issue of Scout Life. These books are really cool. I love talking about it last year. We love the sense of humor. We love the illustrations. We love the song, obviously. That pumped us up. I'm just curious, like, how do you take us on this journey? How do you go about picking which characters you're featuring in each book? How did you pick the characters in the new book?
All right, I'll go first. We work with a great editorial team for the podcast, and that same team helps us identify these stories that we think are going to resonate with kids and families really well. And Jillian and I talk about them. We're like, okay, we want to do this one. We want to do this one. And Jillian and I will kind of go back and forth about who wants to write which particular myth. But when it comes to the book, we have such a great editorial team from National Geographic Kids. They're such a great organization. They have all of these college professors and experts that help us choose what is going to work for us and what is going to work best for the book. So we have so much material to pick from. Greek mythology is just the beginning, though. We're actually going to start getting into myths from all around the world in other upcoming books that you teased, but I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's very, very cool. Yeah, I want to just explain to everybody the Greeking Out series. It began as a podcast, a few years ago? Is that right?
Yeah. We're almost on season 11 now. So it's about 5 or 6 years ago. We do 2 seasons a year. Yeah.
Gotcha. So the National Geographic Kids Greeking Out podcast out there, you can listen to it from your favorite podcast app. And then just last year, I think book 1 came out, the process of going from a podcast to a book. Jillian, what can you tell us about that? That seems a different medium, but you're still telling stories, right?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's different than you would have thought, because some things on the podcast don't translate as well to the book. And then some things in the book don't necessarily translate as well to the podcast. So we work really hard to make it so if you're brand new to the book, if you haven't listened to the podcast, if you could pick up the book and you would feel like right at home, you wouldn't be left out, you would be able to start fresh. But we also want our longtime podcast listeners to be able to pick up the book and feel like it's the same tone and the same style. as the podcast. So the illustrations in the book really do a great job of bridging that gap. It sort of gets the humor, it gets the tone right away. Like these drawings, our illustrator is amazing. And you can kind of see like the humor, the angle we're going for just by skimming through and looking at the pictures. He does a really great job.
No, that is so true. The tone is very evident with these. And I think that that's what makes them very unique, obviously. And they are humorous. And we're going to get a little bit into the jokes in a minute. A reminder for our viewers, we're giving away copies of the book today. We're aiming for about every 5 to 7 minutes. We've given one book away. Kim is taking that home. If you're looking for a chance to win a book, all you have to do is comment along with today's show. We've reserved some time at the end of the show to ask our authors questions. So if you have questions, if you have a scout at home who has questions about writing, anything, or Greek mythology, hey, these are your experts. Speaking of writing, what were the, I mean, we talked to you last year. What were some of the differences between writing the first book to the second? Any new challenges, any differences? Take it away. Kenny, maybe you take this one first.
Yeah, I mean, Jill, I don't want to speak for you, but I think the challenges for me were really trying to find a different way to approach the same material. Because, you know, these stories have been told for thousands and thousands of years, right? And we've covered some of the material on the podcast already. So I think that's why we picked out the title Heroes and Olympians, because we decided to focus. You need some sort of criteria to break it down. So we decided to focus on stories about heroes or Olympians, characters in Greek mythology that you know the characters, but you might not know the story. Or we tell you a story about a character that you may never have heard of before.
Yeah, and speaking of characters, there are tons and tons of interesting. It's fascinating to me how, like you said, Kenny, these stories have persisted over centuries, right? I mean, it's really interesting, and these characters have just become a part of lore. Jillian, I'm just curious, as you work on the podcast, as you work on the book, you have a favorite? Can you let us in a little bit? Do you have a favorite character that you've sort of become attached to?
Well, my longtime favorite is Circe, the sorceress. And we covered her story in the first book. And then in this book, there's a chapter called 3 Old Ladies and One Scary Eyeball that talks about 3 older ladies. They're the sisters of Medusa. And between the 3 of them, they have 1 tooth and 1 eyeball. And it's a whole crazy tale. Perseus goes in there and tries to get information about Medusa. And those 3 old ladies are a hoot. That was a fun one to write. So they're my favorite from this book.
The stories really resonate with our audience big time. Just to read a couple comments. Jennifer says, I've been looking at the books, but wasn't aware there was a podcast. My daughter will love this. Definitely check that out, Jennifer. Effie, who's a friend of the show and a friend of ours, says, this is one of my son's favorite podcasts. And that's high praise considering where we live. They're Greek. They live in Greece. So that's pretty cool.
Kidding me? Oh,
Yes,
that's
thank you.
endorsement. I've got to remember that.
It begs the question, why do you think that these stories appeal to kids so much?
I just think they've been around for a long time. We talked about this last time about how there's the archetypes, Hades is sort of a Darth Vader type and Athena is sort of a Wonder Woman type. But I also think the themes of these stories are important. But I also think the idea of storytelling to figure out what's going on in your world, to make sense of your world, is something that everybody gets. I mean, we can go right back to the Bible for this. That's how we learn stuff. Stories were told to us. And so I think in a lot of ways, it's really relevant in Greek mythology to see ancient civilizations and ancient people trying to make sense of their world using stories. And I'm not just talking about like, oh, the sun must be somebody flying a flaming chariot in the sky. I'm talking about the morals and the idea of how we get along with each other and how we figure out how to understand each other. So I really feel like that's a large part of what Greek myths and storytelling in general can bring to all of us. But the bottom line is they're fun. Crazy characters doing crazy things.
Yeah, I love the idea, of people thousands of years ago sitting around telling these stories. On scout campouts today, kids sit around campfires and tell stories. I mean, that there's still something about that I think appeals to our, inner instinct, because we've been doing that as a civilization for so long, and it still is so rewarding. It's a fascinating concept. And like you said, those myths, it's the modern version of, superheroes, right? And Star Wars and Marvel and DC and all these things like that. Some of those same elements are still present. We have so many more questions for you guys, but before we do that, Gina, I think it's time to give another book away.
It definitely is. So this is very exciting. Our next book is going to Jennifer Brandon. Yay! Jennifer, keep your eye on your inbox. We'll message you, get your address, and ship this your way. And everybody else watching, keep commenting. Every time you are commenting, you're entering for a chance to win one of. Well, we have 2 more books to give away. That's quite a bit, considering we only have about 15 more minutes, 20 more minutes. So very exciting.
Exactly. It's a great book. The book is called Greeking Out Heroes and Olympians. It's book number 2 in the Greeking Out series, which, as we're learning today, started as a podcast and now is a series of books. Another thing that it's a great partnership with Scout Life. Our audiences have a lot of the same interests. And I'm talking about the jokes.
Yeah.
One of the most popular part, Kenny and Jillian, we work really, really hard to produce these stories in Scout Life magazine. We make a lot of phone calls and do a lot of research. And then when we talk to readers, we're like, what's the favorite part? Well, we like the jokes. You guys seem to have discovered that too. Can you give us an example of some of the jokes from your book?
I don't know. I will say there's a lot of jokes in this book, but there were a whole lot more that got cut. The editors had to cut us off at some point. So I don't know. I think that's just how we communicate with each other. We're both, I don't even want to say funny. I'm going to go with silly. Like, it's just the outrageousness of some of our jokes they're just off the wall, kind of zany humor. So there are a lot in there, but my favorite thing we got away with was the glossary is, like a traditional glossary full of terms, Greek names, places, but each item has a little joke in there and it's just off the wall. Like, you're thinking you're going to look at this academic glossary and there's just all these silly jokes in there. And I just find it humorous that someone's going to look something up and then laugh along the way. So that's my favorite little moment.
We were talking about why mythology appeals to young people, but I think that's why these books appeal to young people. It's just a great sense of humor. It's very evident just speaking with y'all. You are silly, but you're also funny. It seems like a really fun team to work on. But let's talk a little bit about this team. You're unique in that you are a father-daughter duo. What's it like to work as a father-daughter duo? I think we need to hear from both of you on this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Maybe Jill, you want to start?
Yeah.
Okay. It's great. I mean, it is, we look at each other sometimes and like, are we really doing this? People like this stuff? Like, it's just mind blowing that we get the opportunity to do this. Growing up, Kenny would always tell me bedtime stories, and just that was always in the fabric of our family, storytelling and writing and creativity. And then I always used to bug him to write a book. I was like, when are you going to do it? Let's see it. Let's do this. And then the only way he did it was when I joined the team and wrote it for him. So, but it's great. We just have so much fun. We bounce ideas off of each other. We have friendly family arguments. It's a good time. We have a great time doing it.
As a dad, there's nothing better. There really isn't anything better. There's the pride of working with you, of seeing your child's work, but of also to be part of that process, the creative process with someone that you love in that way is really rewarding on a whole nother level, as we like to say. But also we can keep each other in check. We can be brutally honest with each other. And that saves a lot of time. You're in the building and, you're in a meeting and somebody's trying to tell you your idea isn't good. And you're like, eh. And Jillian's like, oh, that was stupid, Dad. We're not doing that. Okay, fair. Moving on. We don't take it personally coming from each other because we know we love each other. We have that honesty and that trust. So I think that helps a lot. And I think in terms of the comedy and the constant banter, I'm throwing out the quantity of jokes. Jillian's more on the quality of jokes. So I just kind of keep the dad jokes coming and Jillian helps me select the good ones.
I bet the flip side of what you just said is true too. When you're working with family, sometimes maybe if you really believe in something, you feel more comfortable defending it too, because it's okay to be like, no, Dad, you're wrong. Like, this is a good idea, or the opposite. So I'm jealous. I think it just seems like a fun team to work on. I would love to work with my dad.
It's a lot of fun.
It does seem great. And, again, we talked about storytelling. This is something that's been going on for ages. We all have memories. When I was a kid, I used to love hearing stories from my parents and my grandparents, and I would even ask them to tell the same stories over and over again. And, my kids are older now. I miss the days when they used to ask me to tell them a story. I think every dad thinks of themselves as a master storyteller, Jillian, but yours might be a little bit better than the average one. Do you have a favorite story or memory of the story that your dad told you when you were a kid?
There were many, but no, he is, that's his thing. Like, he is a storyteller for sure. And the way his mind works is so impressive and so cool. And I just remember being, I don't know, like 7 or 8 years old. And I would try to tell my friends the stories he told me. And they were not like understanding. I'm like, I can't tell it the way my dad can. Just hold on. You don't understand. This is a really cool idea. But there were princesses and dragons and pirates and I don't know. It was crazy, but
that's awesome.
Every night we would continue. I mean, these were like marathon stories. I feel like it would go on for like years, but I always said you should write them down.
So maybe as a follow-up, Kenny, where does all that come from?
Well, I think it comes from, just sort of real life. I mean, one of the stories that Jillian and I told, and I actually sort of wrote this one down, is she used to have this stuffed animal. It was like a stuffed dog, man, but it was like anthropomorphic. It was kind of like a man. We called it Man Dog, and she kept losing the thing. Like she'd be like, "Where's Man Dog at night? Where's Man Dog?" And so, and what I would do is I would tell her how Man Dog was off on this adventure, and so, but he kept getting lost. The reason he was lost is because he was helping some other family do something. So we had all these series, and then eventually I'd find him behind the sofa, and I'm like, "Look, Man Dog's back!" And she's like, "Where was he?" And we tell her that story. So. A lot of these times that, stories are just born out of what's right in front of you at the time and what you sort of need to do, for your family, or in this case, to get your daughter to go to sleep. You have to tell her something. So.
Yeah, can I just say the ability to tell a really wacky story is a solid gift when trying to reason with like a toddler or a young child for sure. So I can see where that could be born from for sure. Reminder to our audience, we're about to give another book away in 2 minutes. So comment for a chance to win. You can see that book peeking up. We did this last year with y'all. I would love to. Another question for both of you. I remember having a lot of fun with this last year, Kenny, but what is a cool Greek fact most don't know that you'll find in the book?
Did we talk about Cyclops last year? Did we talk about the Cyclops last year? I don't know if we did or not.
So.
I don't think so.
The plural of Cyclops is Cyclopes. And that is, it sounds like it's made up, and it sounds like it's something that a dad would make up, but it's like octopus, octopi, but it's true. Cyclopes is more than one Cyclops. I did not know that when I started it. I also think there are very many happy marriages or romances in Greek mythology, but in this book we learn about Nyx and Erebus. Is it Erebus, Jill?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Erebus. Yes, the goddess of night and the god of darkness. They live together in Hades, and they have a very happy romance, but they live together in the underworld. It seems like they're a good couple. Night and darkness fit together very nicely, but there aren't very many happy romances in Greek mythology. And ironically, the one that's in the underworld is.
I don't understand the Greek underworld in some ways. It seems, probably because my impression of the movie Hercules, the Disney film, like it doesn't seem so bad. And then you just described a perfect relationship that's happening down there, so I'm confused.
There's a whole, I will just say this, I can't give away too much about book 3, but your questions will be answered in the 3rd book in the Greeking Out series, because there's
a nice little
there's
tease
a
for
lot.
there.
My teasing,
but I will say, but the underworld is quite big. Disney did not accurately represent the underworld there. There's many levels. Some are not as bad as others. There's like
Elysium.
prison inside the underworld. I mean, I think in the third book there might actually be a map to show you all the different levels.
Okay, so I guess I need to keep acting right. Don't just trust that it's not bad down there.
Yeah, no, you don't want to end up there. Okay, it's not a good place.
That's the thing in Greek mythology. Remember, all these characters, many of them were immortal, so they couldn't die. So they would go to a place called Tartarus, which was like this terrible prison because you couldn't die. So they'd be in prison there, and that's where you find people like Tantalus in this book, who is in a river, who's thirsty and hungry. He's in a river up to his neck, and every time he bends down to take a drink, the river goes down, and every time he leans up to eat the grapes dangling above him, they go out of his reach. He can never eat or drink for the rest of his life, the rest of eternity, but he's trapped looking at both things.
Hey, that sounds awful.
That doesn't sound great, does it, Gina? That doesn't sound so nice.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Totally.
The book, so when you've heard them reference book 3, that will come out at some point next year. Book 2 has just been out for a little over a month, I think, couple of months. It's called Greeking Out Heroes and Olympians. Gina, I think we have 4 copies to give away today. We've given away 2.
Yeah, I have a third.
Time to give away number 3.
Yes, it is on the dot. Time to give away number 3. This person, I'm going to read their comment first. My daughter was just asking about mythology. Well, Marie, you have a gift for her. Marie Mott, you are taking our 3rd copy home. We'll message you, get your address, and ship it your way. Congratulations.
Hey, Marie.
Yes, congratulations. Keep watching, guys. We have 1 more book to give away here in the next 7 or 8 minutes or so. So be sure and comment for a chance to win that. Congratulations, Marie. I want to follow up on that a little bit. Gina mentioned the underworld. Some of these myths are kind of scary. You guys, I think, had to do a little bit of creative editing to leave out some of the scariest parts. Is that right? I mean, I want to be clear with everybody. This is a kid-friendly book. There's not anything that's inappropriate or whatever. If your kids like Scout Life, they're going to like this book. But am I right that, I mean, some of these myths kind of creepy? Jillian, Kenny, is that right?
Yeah, they're, if you know anything about Greek mythology, you know that they have a penchant for darkness. And there's a lot that goes into, sometimes when we're choosing the myths, we're like, that we can't go there. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we have to downplay, right, some of the scarier things. And the way we like to do it the most is with the humor, is with the jokes. And the illustrations also help with that. It makes the dragon less scary, the giant less scary if it's, drawn in a particular way. We also have a little character in the podcast called the Oracle of Wi-Fi. And she's kind of like the Alexa of Greek mythology. And she kind of buzzes in right when a scene gets really intense on the podcast and breaks it up and often tells a joke or a fact or just sort of breaks the fourth wall and lets people know that this is just pretend. This is just a story. And then we kind of do that the same in the book. We have the Oracle of Wi-Fi on the margins there. And she provides context or adds a joke or just add some humor to break up the scariness. But most of the time, I mean, it is kid friendly. Like you said, it's through National Geographic. It's in schools. We have a little disclaimer at the top that says like, this story features a giant with 100 eyes and just sort of gives you a heads up as to what's coming. But it's our intent that kids in this age range will enjoy it and won't be totally scared. A little scared, but not totally.
Yeah.
If you are sold, we have a link at the bottom of the screen where you can purchase Greeking Out, both books in the series. And you can follow along with us. Keep your eyes on Scout Life and Nat Geo Kids so you can find out when the 3rd book drops. Getting a lot of good comments. Love the Oracle. It's what Pythia would be like today. That's funny. Someone says, my son is traveling on a Grecian Odyssey in 2026. I'd like to know more about that. Please.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Can we go? Pack 304 from San Juan, Puerto Rico is watching. Thank you all for tuning in. We're lucky to have you all today. So maybe if you wanted just a quick, I think our audience is a testament, if you're watching, to say, hey, your kid's going to like this book. But if you wanted to just get a little quick excerpt and just get a little teaser, read it with your kids tonight, you can check this out in the October issue of Scout Life. There's actually an excerpt. You can see some of the illustrations, which I'd like to get into. What is the illustrative process? Who does it? How do you work with them? Make sure that your vision's matching their vision and vice versa.
It's like magic. I did not expect it to go this smoothly. Honestly, we didn't pick the illustrator. National Geographic said, "Oh, we got this great illustrator. You're gonna love him." And anytime somebody says that, you're like, "Okay, great." It turns out Javier Espila, he lives in Spain. We've never met him. We swap emails, we swap messages back and forth. He listened to the podcast and he nailed it, like right out of the gate. He got the right tone. These drawings are a little bit comic book, a little bit cartoon. And he understood the tone of what we were going for in the book and in the podcast right away. And I mean, I love working with him. Every time we get a chance to see early art, I'm so excited. It makes it feel so much more legit.
And you can see an example again of that type of illustration in the October issue of Scout Life magazine. The book is Greeking Out Heroes and Olympians. In the October issue of Scout Life, we feature the story of Jason and the Argonauts. That's just one of multiple stories, multiple characters in these books that you guys are telling. I'm curious, Kenny, Jillian, you both can answer this question. Do you have a favorite story? Was there any of all these myths and all these stories, was there one that really resonated with you guys?
Well, I'm going to say Jillian's story about love at first horse is probably my favorite story in this book, because it's, again, just like Heroes and Olympians, it's an Olympian that Poseidon, god of the sea, and it's something you might not know about him, which is that Poseidon invented the horse. And this is the story about why. And he did it to impress a girl. And it's just a really funny and fun story. And it's it's different from all of the other Greek myths that we tell in this book. I love it. It's my favorite.
Yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite, it's hard to pick a favorite. But we do a couple myths in here that are from the Odyssey, a lot of Odysseus' adventures. We tell the story of like the Cyclops and the lotus flowers, and how we get stranded on an island with a sorceress Calypso. And those were really fun because I feel like people have heard of portions of that story. So we got to rebrand it in a Greeking Out, kid-friendly way. So those were really fun to tell.
So I've kind of been racking my brain the whole time on this, thinking when I was a kid and even in high school, I was really into Greek mythology. Why was it? I know it's like the great question, and we've answered it in some ways. But one thing I really liked is I remember I had a summer reading that was a Greek mythology book, and I liked it because it was like moderate length stories. So I could go in, dig into a story, and then leave it. And then the next day I could come back and dig into another again. So that begs the question, how's this book formatted? I think we get a little taste in that we're able to have an excerpt, but like, how, if we have a young reader opening this book, what can they expect?
I think they can open the book to any page, find their favorite drawing, and then flip forward or back to the beginning of a chapter and go. You really don't have to read it in order. These are all self-contained stories, just like every episode of the podcast is sort of a self-contained story. There is a little bit of a through line, like some stories might reference, like if you remember on page 18, we told you the story of this guy. Well, here he appears in this story, because that happens a lot. Characters, and particularly Olympians, show up in different stories. But that's the beauty of it, is it's a great bedtime storybook. It's a great coffee table book. And I know I'm just talking the merchandise here, but really it's designed that way because that's how the podcast was meant to be consumed. Each story is its own thing. And you can keep going back to the well several times for that, and really have an experience that is, I don't know, modular. Makes it sound like Swedish furniture, but you know what I mean.
We're talking coffee tables, so why not?
Yeah, right.
We've mentioned this a couple of times, but before we give away our last book, I do have one final question for you guys, and we've kind of touched on this multiple times. But Gina mentioned she was into this stuff when she was a kid. I was into it when I was a kid. I remember one of my friends had an illustrated encyclopedia of Greek mythology, and it was the same way. You could flip through it, you could find an illustration that you liked, and then read the little entry that went along with it. So either one of you who could weigh in, what is it about these stories that appeal to people? The world was different when I was a kid, right? Everything was different, but yet these myths appeal to us just like they appeal to kids today. What is the deal? Why are these stories so interesting to people after all these years?
Yeah, we're adults. We kind of understand the world, or we think so. Why are we still like, well, right. This is how the sun
what is going on?
I think there's just a universal truth element in all these stories that we're just naturally drawn to, And Kenny mentioned before, these themes, these characters, these archetypes come up again and again in our modern society and our culture today. So reading the originals, I think we just resonate with them, and it's just something that feels natural. And even if you haven't heard the story this way and this Greek language, you recognize some part of the story. Like it's very there's something in it that just resonates, I think, with the human nature. What about you, Kenny?
Yeah, there's a familiarity to Greek mythology that I think even if you don't know the stories, the stories. You've heard this before. There's a whole, and the more we delve into international mythology from outside of Greek mythology, the more we realize that there's so many similarities between a lot of these stories that it's great to be able to celebrate them. I think the Greeks just had the best marketing and the best branding in a lot of ways. I mean, honestly, the Romans took the Greek myths and renamed them, right? So essentially, so we have a really great opportunity to use those archetypes to reach out to kids and families in the world. I think that's what appealed to me. I mean, when I was a kid, I was a Dungeons and Dragons nerd, but it all started with Greek mythology and the Edith Hamilton book.
We learn like Greek roots and Latin roots for words. It helps us build our ability to speak, but it's true. The references also in Greek mythology are pretty important to how we communicate as well. You don't understand what flying too close to the sun means if you don't have some background in Greek mythology. So this is eye-opening. We'd love to have y'all back before a year. Hopefully it's a given that we see you in a year, but it's really fun speaking with you. We barely get to talk anything to drill into this. I think we could talk for a long time. So everybody also remember, if you cannot get enough of Greek mythology, if your kids cannot get enough of Greek mythology, make sure you are subscribing to the podcast. I'm going to listen as soon as we get off here.
Awesome. Trek on. Thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. This was great.
It really was. Let's end today's show with a couple things. First, I would love to put that link back up on screen for folks who are looking to purchase books from the Greeking Out series. The newest book is Greeking Out Heroes and Olympians. Also, a reminder, you can read a short snippet of the book in the October issue of Scout Life. And we've got a book to give away.
We have one final book to give away as Gina does the calculations on her super advanced winner selection computer. Just want to remind everybody, there's 2 books out. Greeking Out, Epic Retellings of Classic Greek Myths, came out a year or so ago. The most recent one that we're giving away right now is Heroes and Olympians. We love them both. Book 3, look for it next year sometime, guys. But in the meantime, Gina, our final winner of the day
is Rebecca Wallingford.
Congratulations, Rebecca.
Read a closing thought from Effie, who is a great communicator in her own right, who has a call out for you, Aaron. She says, heroes with flaws are magnetic. I think that's why the myths pull us back. Good food for thought. There's lots of good food for thought in today's episode and even more in the actual Greeking Out series. So check it out. Have we missed anything? Is there anything else we need to add before we let all the good people go?
I think we're good. Congratulations to everybody who won a book. Thank you guys.
Congratulations. And if you didn't win a book, you can buy it on Amazon or at your local bookstore near you or at your local library. They're everywhere for good reason. They're really, really cool. And by the way, Christmas is coming up. I don't know if you guys know, holidays is coming up. If you're looking for a gift for your Scout-aged kids, I'm just saying, it seems like a pretty good choice to me.
Hey, listen. I mean, it can fit in a stocking, right? You can.
Absolutely.
I would love to see a stocking with a huge book shape, in it.
It works. Make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jill and Kenny, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next year, if not sooner. Aaron, see you even sooner, probably next week.
Unfortunately, we'll see each other very soon. But thank you all for watching.
Back, guys.
Kenny and Jillian, it's so good to see you guys again. Have a great holiday season. Good luck with book 3, and we will see everybody soon.
Yeah, get to work.
Thank you.
Yeah, get to work. Bye, everybody.